Black Myth WuKong hit a new peak on Steam with 2.35 million players actively playing. It's currently #1 on Steam and #2 of all time on the platform. China is also using the game in a promotional video for tourism for its accurate depiction of different landmarks. This game is taking over the internet right now, and for very good reasons, because it's fantastic. However, as good as the game is, it can be a very frustrating one as well, due to the style of gameplay. This is a game that I can only describe similar to that of a Souls-like experience. If you offer your incense at what is essentially a save station, you can spawn back there each time that you die. The further on that this save station is into the world, I'll refer to it as a save station throughout just for ease, then you can essentially get further and further into the story. So if I rested at the very first save station, then played an hour without finding another one and died, I will spawn all the way back at the start and have to do everything all over again, with the enemies spawning back in, so on and so forth. For someone like myself that isn't very well versed in this kind of game, I was humbled very quickly when it first came to the first 2 hours of playing this game and fighting the bosses you encountered very early on as well. But throughout my current 10+ hour playthrough, I've learnt a lot about this game. How to approach different boss fights, how to maintain your sanity whilst playing, and how to get through WuKong. Look, I'm only on Act 2, I've got I think another 4 acts to go, so still a long way, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it as I'm going through. But I wanted to make this video to share a couple of things that I wish I knew when starting this game up from the start. Tips that a player like myself that isn't really massively into these types of games can take on board and use going forward in their journey of Black Myth WuKong. If you guys are enjoying Black Myth WuKong though, leave a like on this video and comment down below. I want to see how many of you are actually enjoying this game and what your thoughts and opinions are of the game, as there are a lot of very good ones, but you always get the one or two which have a different opinion to that. But without further ado, let's dive straight in to these tips. #1, and probably the most important one for future boss fights, is collecting resources. WuKong's world is very open, allowing you to move freely between different save points across the world anytime you want to. My 10 hours into the game allows me to travel back to the first ever save point, and that's perfect for a few reasons. In different areas of the world, you come across different types of resources. Resources which are useful for medicines as you progress through the game, helping you in those more intense boss fights. These medicines could be the difference between winning and losing that fight, so they're super useful and important. The more jungle-like areas of the world are great for different types of mushrooms and licorice, even some variants of flowers. Whereas the more desert areas, you might not be able to find these resources as prominently due to the weather conditions, so it does depend on where you are. So it's worth circling back to the different biomes and locations in search of these different resources. They will help you a significant amount. #2, explore the map. This is a big one that I learnt quite a few hours into my playthrough that I didn't really think about doing. These types of games are not just focused on the soul story and boss fights. Yes, you can progress and you can take out the main bosses one after another throughout the entirety of the game and complete it, but it just means it's going to make life a lot harder than what it would be if you just did the game properly. That's the approach I took at the start, and it made everything way harder, and I've probably wasted hours fighting bosses because I wasn't well prepared for them. You have a series of main bosses of course, but then you have mini bosses scattered around the map that have different abilities, allowing you to claim their spirits and use the abilities that they use against you in combat. When I'd see a mini boss at the start, I'd just say, bugger that, I'd rather put all my eggs into fighting the main boss and leave this area behind for now, or maybe come back later. But I learnt the hard way that this was not how the game was meant to be played. Could it be done like that? Of course, as we've just said, and probably with relative ease with someone who's very well versed in these type of games. But for me, no, I'm not. I found that when I progressed to chapter 2, I went back to the jungle to search for some resources and gather them, and I stumbled across a boss that I decided to not fight earlier, and when I fought them, they dropped a new ability, and one that I would go on to use in every single boss fight going forward. This also unlocked an additional boss fight after, because I rang the 3 bells, which I didn't know was a thing, further progressing the story and giving me a more secretive boss fight that I wouldn't have got if I didn't do that. Explore the map. Don't do what I did and neglect bosses just because they were hard at the time. Come back to them later if needed, but explore as much as you can. It makes the later boss fights much easier. It will help you a tremendous amount. Number 3, use your medicines and put them in your hotbar. This was one I didn't do for a while and I regretted it. You eventually, when reaching a certain level and meeting a certain side character, be given access to medicines. These can range from the ability to take a reduced amount of incoming damage, deal additional damage, take less poison damage, fire, ice and shock damage. Depending on your boss or enemy, they will deal different types of damage and have different types of abilities, so being smart and syncing your medicines up with the fights ahead can only aid you in battle. This is why resource collecting is so important in WuKong, and is sort of one of those things where, other than the gear, the armor, and of course the strategy to fighting these bosses, you've got to be well equipped with your medicines to help you fight them easier. Put these key medicines in your hotbar and use them during your fights. Many bosses fight in different ways, so you can judge on the best time to use them, as the animation might screw you over a few times. Finally, bosses. Come back to them if you struggle, but also be persistent. My biggest problem with these types of games is the death counter. It's awfully big, but that's a part of the process. Learning how bosses fight, their movesets, their triggers for different types of moves, allowing you to move with precision away from their attacks. It's all an art form. It's one big process, and I'm really starting to love it. Patience with these types of games is a virtue. I think yesterday, when I was very unprepared for one of these fights, it took me an hour to try and get past one of them. And that's just because of my own doing. If I went into that boss fight prepared, I probably would have beat it in 20 minutes or so. It just depends on how you approach these fights. But be patient and don't rush them. Come back to them if you have to. Take a step away, go and make a cup of tea, a coffee, go have a walk around somewhere, come back, and then try again. If not, go and get some more resources. Don't be afraid to retreat. Go back to a previous area in the map and get some more mushrooms or flowers or whatever you need to do to create these medicines to give you damage increases, damage reduction, poison reduction. Go and prepare well. If you prepare well, it means you'll be better off in these fights. That's what you need to take from this game. I learnt the hard way. Don't make the same mistake as I did. But guys, that is a couple of little tips for Black Myth WuKong that I found as a brand new player, a pretty newbie kind of player when it comes to these types of, I want to say a soul-like game. I don't know, I could get ripped for that, but it kind of is in the sense of the gameplay loop. So that was my tips to anyone that's brand new to the game. Hopefully they've helped in some way or shape or form, and I hope they go on to help you to be a better player at Black Myth WuKong. But thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. Leave a like if you have enjoyed, subscribe if you guys are brand new, comment down below your thoughts on the game. If I've missed any points off or any tips, leave them down below as well for people to have a look at. But guys, take care. See you next time.